Okay. Here's that moment of truth. Let's just wait for everything to load up here and make sure that we're live. You guys know me. I have to see it. I have to see it to make sure we're good here. Rockfin, you're a little slow today. What's going on? YouTube, I think we're live on YouTube. Let me just, YouTube, it looks like we're good. All right, YouTube, we're up. Cool. Twitter, we're up. Rockfin, where are Rockfin is here. Okay. Rockfin wasn't last this time. YouTube was in second. Twitter's always first. Twitter just right away. Twitter never has the issues loading. And YouTube and Rockfin, it's always a battle for second. But we made it. We are live. What's up, everybody? Good afternoon to everyone. It's actually afternoon on the West Coast now, too. Why is that? Well, because it is MMT Monday. Once a month, we have a segment dedicated to MMT, which is modern monetary theory. And we do that segment at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. We got a couple topics in the MMT world to get through today. First of all, welcome to Get Your News On with Ron, and this is the interview show of the week. Although this is also a dedicated MMT segment, but nonetheless, getting me through it is my MMT dealer, my MMT guy, my MMT. I'm trying to think of something that starts with M. MMT Muse, but that sounds a little weird. I don't know if I like that. Yeah, we're gonna nix that one. It sounds kind of strange. I don't want to call him that. Sorry, Jeff. Anyway, please welcome back to the show, the MMT dude. I like that, even though it doesn't start with them. Anyway, welcome back to the show, the host of the Activist MMT podcast, and my MMT guy once a month, Mr. Jeff Epstein. Jeff, what's up, buddy? Not the bad one, the this one. Jeff,
Hello, Ron. I am very partial to MMT dealer. I like that. Good to see you. How you doing?
That's a fun one. I mean, MMT dealer. That's always a fun one. So we got a couple stories pertaining to what's going on in the world. But first, we'll start like we always do. Let's go ahead and give everybody a very quick elevator pitch of what MMT, which stands for modern monetary theory, what that actually is. And I'll let you go first.
Okay. MMT is a map. It is a map, just like a geographical map is guides you around the land that you live on. It is impossible for you to see the whole thing. A map of the economy, the theory of the economy, MMT, is a theory of the economy that is one map of the economy. It shows you how to navigate, how to understand the economy and our legal system. Neoclassical economics is another one. There are several other theories, each of them a different map, but it's all referring to our actual economic system that we have. The map of MMT is accurate. It actually represents the land that we live on. You choose, you can see all the destinations that are on it. You choose where you want to go. You can beeline to it. You know exactly what to expect along the way. It does not mean that you will actually get there, because there may be something outside of the scope of that map trying to stop you, such as a guy with a gun at the door of your destination. So the neoclassical map is different in that it is completely bogus, so that you think you're picking a destination and beelining to it, but in reality, you're actually just wandering around aimlessly. And that allows them to avoid having to have a guy with a gun at the door and having direct confrontation. So MMT is an accurate map of the economy.
Okay. Not quite elevator pitch level, but yeah.
2 elevators.
We'll take it. Yeah, that was 3 or 4, but we'll take it. So yeah, MMT stands for modern monetary theory. We do a segment around MMT centric content once a month. And so let's go here. Let's hit it. This really caught my attention because this is just something. All right. So how Goldman Sachs profits from war in Ukraine, and this is because of a loophole in sanctions. So why this was of interest to me, I think part of something like modern monetary theory, when you break it down, you have to go a step back even further, and you have to look at, what does it mean to have money in a society? What does it mean how we interact with money? What exactly does money do? Is there a difference between having money in a society as a tool for organization and having a society that revolves around money? I would say those are two very different things, and I would say we are the latter. We are a society that revolves around money, and we're suffering the consequences because of it. And here's just another, for instance, of all that. And here's just another, for instance, of how war is a racket. So here's a headline from NBC: How Goldman Sachs profits from war in Ukraine due to a loophole in sanctions. So the Wall Street firm has told the public it is, quote, winding down its business in Russia, portraying its actions as supportive of the U.S. efforts to stop Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the conflict itself. We've talked about that plenty here on Get Your News On with Ron. I just want to look at this perspective and what's going on with Goldman Sachs. So Goldman Sachs, playing along with the Western narrative. Hey, we're not investing in Russia. We're not doing that because there's sanctions. Because we're USA, baby. That's what they're doing. They're trying to put on a good PR face, on behalf of the U.S. imperialist narrative. That's not saying that Putin's not a bad guy too. He certainly is, but there's all bad guys here. But anyway, Goldman Sachs, the giant New York investment bank, is cashing in on the war in Ukraine by selling Russian debt to U.S. hedge funds and using a legal loophole in the Biden administration's sanctions to do it. The Western world scrambles to defend Ukraine, blah, blah, blah. So basically what they're doing, they're taking the opportunity to take advantage of Russia's war-crippled economy by buying its debt security low now and selling them high later. So in layman's terms, there is a loophole in these sanctions that allows Goldman Sachs to just buy up all kinds of Russian debt. And it's low right now because there's conflict, there's war, there's sanctions, et cetera, et cetera. So they're buying it low now, and they can do that because there's a loophole that allows them to do it. They're going to hold it, then they're going to sell it high. So they're hedging their bets that it's going to get high again, and that's a safe bet. Why? Because this has to do with issues of war and peace. And who really calls the shots when it comes to this thing, or at least has a very huge influence? Well, the oligarchs of the world, the financial firms of the world, the Wall Streets of the world. This is another reason why war is a freaking racket. They're using this to profit off of war. And this is a pretty safe bet. So they're literally on one side of their mouth going like, yeah, we're not investing in this because it's the right thing to do. Meanwhile, they're gobbling up this debt with the hopes of selling it high because war is a racket. And this is just another way they profit off of it. Goldman Sachs figured out the way to maximize their war profits. And by the way, policy allows this, which bringing it back to MMT, we see MMT all the time. MMT, modern monetary theory, basically acknowledges the truth that the United States creates and issues a currency and they can use it whenever they want. And they can use it however they want. So this whole we can't afford this is a bunch of nonsense. And we see it all the time. We saw it recently when they just sent all this money to Ukraine. They sent a ton of money to Ukraine. Nobody said, how can we possibly afford this? They don't say that when it comes to war budgets or giving money to Ukraine in international conflict. They only say it when it comes to healthcare or combating climate change or actually doing something for peace, or getting off of fossil fuels, or you get the idea, something that would actually help out people. But when it's something that will benefit the war machine and pad the profits of the Wall Street firms, of the defense industry, of the Halliburtons in the world, they always have the money. And here's another way the people who really run this place are maximizing their profits while telling you that the opposite's going on. And they say the quiet part out loud. And we're supposed to accept this as a society. Holy shit. Now, Jeff, I'm going to say one more thing, then turn it over to you. I can acknowledge and recognize that we will probably not see a moneyless society in our lifetimes. I doubt we will ever see that. But holy shit, can we do better than this? This is nuts.
You covered one of the major points that I wanted to make, which was just that they're buying low and selling high. They are actually, it encourages manipulation. It encourages the oligarchs and the corporations on both sides to manipulate each other to affect the exchange rate, to affect and the conflict, to affect their profits. Because if you hold U.S. money and you buy Russian money and the exchange rate is such that you can get a lot of rubles, and then you get a lot of rubles, and then those rubles become worth a lot more because the situation has changed. Right. Then suddenly you become rich. So you're manipulating the exchange rate, and that can be partially directly manipulating the oligarchs and the corporations on the other side. I would say that our society doesn't revolve around money as much. It does, but I would
It
say
does.
even more, it revolves around greed. It revolves around greed.
Okay.
I mean, so the other point that I wanted to make was that there's all this talk about the Russian economy collapsing, and in this article, it says, in the second paragraph, I think it says everybody is scrambling to try and defend Ukraine by locking down the Russian money. And what does that mean? Because if Russia is waging this war with the resources that it has domestically, because and if that is true that they are waging their war with the resources, tanks and people and everything that they have domestically, then that means that they are paying for those things with new rubles. So the exchange rate is meaningless if Russia has enough domestically to wage the war. So this shutting down of Russian money, locking down Russian money, is meaningless if they have enough resources to wage the war domestically. The only way that it can actually hurt Russia is if they need to import stuff to wage the war.
Well, here's the thing.
Because then the exchange rate comes into play.
Right. But when you say hurt, I mean, let's kind of specify here. It is hurting regular people.
Oh, I'm sure it's hurting regular people.
Them. You're talking the actual powerful. This is meaningless as far as the powerful goes. This is just really a game played by all the financial criminals in the world. The people in Russia, they're suffering because of all the stuff that's been imposed to them as of recent. Like, they're not able to access all these, I think bank accounts in some cases. They're not able to get all kinds of services now. So this is hurting regular people.
Definitely.
Regular people who have nothing to do with any of this.
Not what I'm referring to. Yes.
No. I know you. I know. I'm just saying. To clarify. It hurts regular people. It doesn't hurt the people at the top. And by the way, just for the record, and again, we've talked about this a lot on my show. I don't want to harp too much on the conflict itself, but regular people in Russia, a lot of them are protesting what Putin's doing. A lot of them have nothing to do with any of this. And this whole thing's a mess from every side. This whole thing's a freaking mess. But here you have Goldman Sachs virtue signaling out of one side of their ass, doing this on the other. And by the way, all these Wall Street firms do the same thing. And it is just such, as Smedley Butler told us years ago, it is just such a freaking racket. And I don't know what it's going to take and this is why the economy of war will never stop. Or at least, it won't stop unless there's a huge revolution, because they find ways to profit off of these things all the time. And again, it goes beyond just the most obvious, that the defense contractors and the Halliburtons of the world are just giving blank checks and going, have fun. It goes beyond that. There's things like this too, where it's like, okay, they're just going to hedge their bets at the sacrifice of people's lives.
Right. They're betting that the conflict will end at some point. And then they'll cash in after things stabilize in a year from now or however long it takes. But the point that I wanted to make, which I totally agree, sanctions hurt regular people. But all the talk is, let's hurt Putin. Let's stop Putin from being able to wage his war, essentially. And so they're talking about isolating Russian money and what is locking down Russian money. But that makes no sense unless Russia has to import what they desperately need to wage the war and to feed their people and so on. And as I understand it, Russia has enough to survive on its own for a while, generally speaking, to wage this war and to feed its people. So because everything that the Russian government purchases in Russia is with newly created rubles. So the exchange rate doesn't affect their domestic, what they purchase within their own country. It can have a big effect if they need to import stuff. So I don't know the answer to that. Maybe they do need to import stuff. But the only harm...
I think time will tell. I don't think anyone really knows the answer to that yet.
Right. But the idea that that manipulating the exchange rate and locking the Russian money down can hurt Russia and Putin, his waging the war, is only the case if he needs to import stuff. And I think a large portion of it, if you're going to wage a war, you're going to make sure that you have enough, available to you to wage that war. I mean, you're not going to wage a war knowing that you have to import things from America to wage the war. That doesn't make sense, because America is going to, cut off access to, all the monetary instruments and sanctions and so on that they can possibly manage.
Well, before we move on, isn't it freaking like, how nuts is it that people just not only accept this? Do you have a pet bird or something? What does that sound? Do you hear
Maybe
that?
there's a bird outside. No, I mean, I guess
Okay.
I did, but if it is, it's just a bird outside.
Did you kidnap a bird? Why'd you kidnap a bird?
I can't say that on the air, Ron.
I thought I heard. Maybe I'm going nuts. Maybe my cat caught a bird. I don't
No,
know.
there's
She's indoors, so.
a window right on the other side of this monitor, so there must be a bird in the tree outside.
Well, spring must be blooming in Pennsylvania, which I don't think is true. Isn't it snowing where you're at?
It's pretty cold, but it's
Okay.
it's kind of starting to end now.
Oh, it is? All right. Well, so I guess there's an adventurous bird out there who's like, I'm ready to mate. The cold doesn't bother me so much.
Economically
Let's
accurate.
do
bird.
it to it.
An owl.
That wasn't it. Owls come out at night, don't they?
Deficit owl. It was just a very
I see what you did there.
MMTers would get it. Sorry.
Okay, I get it. I appreciate it. I get it now. Yeah, owls are really cool though. I don't know a lot about birds. And I'm exposing that right this very second. But isn't it incredible that like this kind of thing, it's not only passively accepted. Like it blows my mind that outside of like a handful of shows like this, you're not going to have anywhere where people look at this and they're like, "You've got to be kidding me." But it's like we not only accept that we have a society built this way, and when I say built this way, I mean a society built on, as you pointed out, greed and money, hand in hand, a society built on seeing something as catastrophic as war as an economic opportunity, and then having the policy be built around them. And again, how does this connect to MMT? Well, because MMT is acknowledging the fact that, like, look, we're not making this shit up, and we're not calling for some utopia either. We're just acknowledging the truth that this is the society the rich and privileged already have. They take advantage of these economic truths constantly. It's regular people who are stuck with rugged neoliberalism. It's regular people who are stuck with, we can't afford this, who are stuck with pay-go, which is bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. But we're just supposed to accept that. We're just supposed to accept that, like, oh no, the idea that something would actually benefit regular people, that's a total pipe dream. And you should just work harder. You should just invest in these horrible companies. You should just play the game to get a scrap of a scrap of a scrap, maybe. And there's enough entertainment to distract you that you'll just ignore this. And guess what? We're at the point now where you can't ignore it anymore because it's crashing.
Yep. One last point about Goldman Sachs, which is they are profiting in the name of trying to hurt Putin. So they're hiding behind this shield of, I'm trying to hurt Putin, which they can't do, in the way that I said. If they have all the stuff domestically, if they have enough domestically, then they can't hurt them. But they're saying that they're doing this to hurt Putin's ability to attack innocent people. But what they're actually doing is not hurting Putin and profiting themselves. That's what MMT. That's what I learned from it, is that they're profiting in the name of trying to hurt a so-called enemy, when they're actually not hurting that enemy under the assumption that they have enough domestically, and they're profiting off it as well.
One could say they're killing in the name of.
Sure.
Some music nerds will get that one. All right. So let's go on to this opinion piece that you shared with me. And this kind of gets into the broader. I mean, we started with a very broad, like, what does it mean to have money in a society? And this is one of the kind of cyclical effects of all this. Now, here's kind of a look. This is a guest essay in an opinion piece that was published in the New York Times, which honestly I was surprised to see something like this in the New York Times.
It's pretty strong for being in the New York Times. It is strong, and the fact that it's in the New York Times is
but you know what,
encouraging.
Yeah, but here's the thing though, man, and I'm not saying this to like put down the piece or anything like that. People need to read between the lines because it's just written through the lens of how economists think. So a lot of people like they're not really going to dive into something like this.
Maybe.
And I don't mean that to like put down David Dayen or anything like that. I'm just saying that's why something like this, the New York Times would throw something like this in there. They're never going to have a headline that says, "Hey, by the way, all of these theories that economists kneel at the altar for, they're all nonsense and they all brought us down to our knees." They're never going to have a headline like that. I mean, that'd
Mhm.
be a very long headline, so they'd have to condense it somewhat. But they're never going to do that. They're going to say like, "Oh, well, let's talk about these theories." You know what I mean?
Sure, sure. I mean, I happen to find this. I mean, I guess as someone studying this specifically, I happen to be very, very impressed by this article. It's a very, very pointed article that really kind of makes it clear of our conversation. Was it a month ago, or I think it was a month ago, of Larry Summers and Mark and Jason Furman, of their motivation, and you
Hmm.
cannot separate the motivation of who's telling you something from what they're telling you.
All
So,
right.
Larry Summers is telling you that free markets are awesome,
Right.
but Larry Summers is on top, and you
Right.
cannot separate those two things.
So, any honest Democrat, we'll start with the article. Any honest Democrat will admit that we are now all Friedmanites, Larry Summers wrote in the Times in 2006. So, what does he mean by that?
I believe that he's referring to, when it continues on, that basically he says that Summers was against Friedman, who is a huge free market.
Right.
And I believe that Larry Summers originally, it says, was
He
really
says he
against
comes
Friedman.
from the upper echelons of he used to have a left-leaning economy, like he came from a family of left-leaning economists who saw Freeman as a devil figure, but as he
Right.
moved into the upper echelons, he came to have great admiration for the conservative
Right.
thinker in his work.
If you care for people, you're not going to like free markets, and you're not going to like, therefore, not going to like Milton Friedman. And it seems to me that any honest Democrat will admit that we are all now Friedmanites. Seems to be the transformation after Larry Summers got into the upper echelons and started, getting rich because he was helping the rich. And so
Mhm.
that is really, to me, is reflecting that I kind of like Milton Friedman now. And we have to admit that we're all Milton Friedman. We all want free market.
Well, and it's also like that's a subtle nod of being like, this is the way. Like this isn't perfect, but this is the
Oops.
way. We need free market, we need deregulation, we need all these things. And if you don't agree with that, it's because you're just not bright enough. You're just not
Of
smart
course.
enough to realize why it's the way.
It's unfortunate but necessary that we have to have it. And if you
Right.
don't want it, then there's something wrong with you, because obviously there's nothing wrong with my philosophy.
Right. So if you're looking at, and to tie it into what we just talked about, if you're looking at something like that and you're realizing, oh my God, a handful of financial firms just profit off of war. They've built an economy around war and they pad their own pockets from it. We should have never done this. This is absolutely insane. You're going to be called a purist. You're going to be called an idealist. You're going to be called naive. You're going to be called all kinds of names, even though your reaction is one of a regular thinking human being. You don't need an economics degree to come to that conclusion. You don't need to have much of anything other than just the basic perception of what's going on and a freaking conscience. That's all you need.
Mhm.
But you're told that you're the one who's out of line. And that's when you have these economists lining up saying, "Oh yeah, no, this is the way," even though it's not the way. It's actually gutted everything here, as this article goes on to point out. And let's go there. The transformation reflects how elite economists in both parties reached a rough accord on the importance of, quote, free markets. By the way, just to decide here, when they say there's nothing free about these markets, by the way, it's not even a, quote, free market. By free market, they just means there are no protections for regular people.
Free
That's what they
market,
mean by free market.
free market freedom, in their version of the term freedom, is freedom of the rich to exploit the poor, and
Yes.
freedom of the poor to sell themselves into slavery.
Yes.
That's what it
Exactly.
that's what it
Yes.
means.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. So anyway, just a quick aside on that. Free
Yeah.
trade and restrained regulation. And by restrained regulation, they mean, again, the rich can do whatever the fuck they want. That's what they mean. Each side believed they could harness these forces.
They can regulate us as workers. We can't regulate them as market because this is
God.
natural and this is not natural. This is natural. Where we are now, this free market hell that we have now is natural. And if you dare try and change this, then you are trying to alter the natural order of things, and
Oh
therefore
my
there's something
freaking
wrong
God.
with you. And actually, they leave the like you kind of were implying, they leave the unspoken, they leave the undesirable option unspoken, and it's like deficit dubs say that well the government has to spend a lot in crisis, but then we have to tighten our belts. The deficit hawks say we always have to tighten our belts, period. But they're basically the same thing. One says we have to tighten our belt always. One says that, that's like Republican. And then Democrats are deficit dubs. We have to tighten our belts, except in crisis. Then we'll tighten our belts. But it all averages out to the same thing. Deficit owls, MMT says, that's complete nonsense. Why are you focusing on the deficit to begin with? The deficit is just merely one way to look at what we did in the past, where they say
the situation with the duopoly that you just painted, and that's inaccurate representation of it, like you just described it accurately. But what that also means too is that assures that the warmongers always get what they want. That
of
like,
course,
oh,
sure.
in rough times we got to spend. Oh, we should never spend. Well, it's rough times.
Well, who does it
I guess
benefit when
comes
it's
to
rough
a spend.
times? Who does that spending benefit when it's
And by
rough
rough times,
times?
I don't even mean rough times economically. I mean, we are of course in rough times economically too, but rough times is in, oh, there's conflict. We gotta.
It's the same thing. I'm saying the same thing, that it benefits the rich. When it benefits the rich in war, in crisis, in recession, it happens to benefit the rich. So then we have to spend big because it benefits the rich. But then we have to tighten our belts when the rich are okay again.
Right. So each side believed they could harness these forces for liberal conservatives' ends. This has this has those vibes of we can have compassionate capitalism. We can have. It's just such a freaking. I feel like most of them don't actually believe this. I think some of them, and when I'm talking about economists here, I think some of them do truly believe it. But I think some, when you reach a certain level of just privilege, you know that it's all bullshit, but you're just selling it because you're benefiting from the status quo, or you're just staying willfully ignorant, or a combination of all the above.
I think they get rich because they help the rich. So they
Sure.
help the rich, they get rich, and then they put themselves on a pedestal being rich, inequality, which is a vulnerable position. And the only way to stay on top, yertle the turtle, is to make sure that everybody else is underneath you, is to keep on pushing people down, is to kicking people off, kicking the ladder. So you are putting yourself in a precarious position, and now you are, you've raised your standards, and now, like Larry Summers is now on top in a way, or at least substantially higher up. And now that is a precarious position for him. And to lose some of that would be incredibly scary for him. So he pushes free market as if it's best for all, when he ignores all the suffering on the bottom. So that and which we'll talk actually even more as we get farther into this article.
So virtually every American feels the consequences of this today. So all their theories, this is where it's gotten us. Whenever we visit a grocery store with empty shelves or do a double take at the price of an appliance, for decades, economists like Mr. Summers advanced policies like globalization, deregulations, and market that valued efficiency over competition. They promised that these trends would deliver lower prices, and for a time they did, but they also left the system vulnerable. In other words, we had a completely inefficient way of doing things. We had a completely unsustainable way of doing things where corporations were just gobbling everything up, spitting everyone else out. They bring up Walmart here, which is the perfect case study of everything that they're talking about here. Here you have these lower prices, but at what cost? It puts people out of work. It exploits people because they pay terrible wages. They use the environment as their playground. They count on a city to pick up the slack. They exploit people. And study after study reveals that having a Walmart in your town actually hurts your economic situation. It actually hurts more than it helps. Way more.
Of course.
But people are kind of just, a lot of people are just like twisted into submission because they don't have a choice. But then it's like, okay, well, this is just what we have now. And yeah, we're paying lower prices for, this product or that product, but in the big scheme of things, you're actually paying a hell of a lot more.
Your wages are lower. Actually, on the paragraph with the virtually, I want to say something about that. The first sentence in there says that we feel the consequences of this today, but the consequences are way more than just, the price of an appliance. It is being demonetized on YouTube because who has gotten control of our lawmakers and our laws, and then all the regulators, and then YouTube starts to shut down independent media, and people are demonetized, and RT is shut down. So when we have inequality, those people on top can buy the lawmakers, can get into all of our institutions and do whatever they want to anyone. And it relates to, I think of Assange, I think of Snowden, I think of Donziger, that all of these things happen because of inequality, because of lowering worker power, because of of killing unions. All of these things are because of this deregulation that Summers and Furman want to do, but they say, oh, lower prices. Of course you want lower prices. We'll give you lower prices. Your wages will go down. So do those lower prices really matter as much as they would if your wages were stable? Of course they wouldn't, because lower wages is lower prices is only one side of the equation. How much money you have is the other side of the equation. And how can you evaluate just one side of the fraction? Because if you have power over changing the other side of the fraction, then you can say, oh, well, the top of the fraction is great. But meanwhile, they're manipulating and screwing you with the other side to make it overall whatever they want it to be.
So I want to go here next. The policies many of these economists championed during the decades leading up to the pandemic are the policies responsible for the supply chain's fragility. When disruptions hit the center of global production in China, they spread across the entire world. Specialized facilities producing most of a particular good or component can easily produce shocks within even a small loss of output. Shipping deregulation passed during the Clinton administration helped lead to ever larger container vessels that can only dock at certain U.S. ports, further narrowing bottlenecks. So
Right.
They're basically pointing out how, in the name of profits, in the name of lowering prices, in the name of just all this free market deregulation, the rich can do what they want. Let's just let the invisible hand jerk itself off. Blah blah blah. This led to all of these grossly inefficient ways of doing things that have stretched our society like we're basically a freaking rubber band. And the smallest thing can frickin' break it. So when you have a big thing like a frickin' public health crisis, look where we're at now.
But these policies are anticipating no crises. Things work great if there are no crises. Their policies of Larry Summers and Jason Furman, their policies work wonderful as long as everything is wonderful. As soon as anything goes bad, then all goes to hell, but not for them. Only for us, because it talks about here like just in time efficiency. So they talk about efficiency. They don't want to have any inventory. They don't want to have any prevention. They don't want to have any, just in case. And they want to have all of their parts being made overseas and critical items being made overseas. So if something overseas happened, like Russia can't be dealing with other countries or is not able to deal with other countries right now. So if you can't do what you need to do internally, if you depend on sending jobs overseas and these massive container ships that can only go to 4 different ports, then when there's an emergency, you're screwed. But the rich aren't screwed because of inequality. They have so much wealth that they can have inventory, they can have prevention, they can have backup all they want. And the laws that they've bought off make it incentivize them to screw their workers and to have 2 ice cream refrigerators. So in case whatever, breaks down, that you have what you need as a rich person. So this just in time works perfectly as long as nothing goes wrong. But when something goes wrong, all hell breaks loose, but only we pay for it.
Well, it looks like even Mr. Summers is acknowledging that a little bit. They're giving a little bit of lip service where he goes, going forward, we will need more emphasis on just in case, even at some cost in terms of just in time, which is, just basically a platitude. But even that, he's basically saying, we're not really going to change anything. Our way of doing things is still freaking great. We just, maybe we'll, maybe
he said that in
a little bit of a check here.
Yeah, he said that in the depth of the chaos of the pandemic. So of course, he kind of did it actually change in that way? I really don't think so. But
Well,
he
of course.
acknowledged that oh, we have a gigantic pandemic where my policies are suddenly not working somewhat. So of course, maybe we need to consider a little bit of inventory and prevention and so on. But it's a big deal of this is like, again, connecting it to the Russian-Ukrainian conflict is just Russia can do what it needs to do with its domestic resources. I believe, at least substantially, they certainly can. Which means that they are not affected as much. People are, but the powerful are not affected as much by other countries trying to hurt it monetarily, because they create rubles and they buy everything with created rubles as long as it's in the country. And the same thing here, where all of their policies, Furman and Summers' policies, outsourcing. Let's hire cheaper employees overseas. Let's buy cheaper products overseas. That is a critical ingredient to things that we need here. And now a pandemic, and now a crisis. And now we can't rely on those outsourced workers and those outsourced parts and those huge container ships coming over with bottlenecks and supply chain issues. So we are not self-sufficient. We don't have to be totally self-sufficient, but we're clearly way on the opposite side of being, overly dependent on trade to do what is critical for us, which means we're not prepared for crises.
Right. And I think that, what you and I are both kind of emphasizing, and kind of the point of this article, is it's about magnitude. Certainly something like a public health crisis will disrupt anything. You could have the most efficient, equitable system in the world. A public health crisis is certainly going to affect things. Nobody's denying that. But it really makes you realize just how grossly, the ironic thing is it's inefficient in the name of efficiency. It's like, this is in the name of efficiency. Well, it's grossly inefficient. It's inefficient. It's, first of all, morally corrupt to all hell, and it's completely unsustainable. And
it's efficient in the short term, as long as nothing goes wrong. But as you're saying, life happens, and to anticipate that nothing goes wrong is a recipe for hurting average people. But they're in an echelon that they don't need to care, and they're in fact incentivized not to care. But they have the inventory and the backup and the wealth to be able to weather the storm when a storm happens.
So here's the end of this thing. But it's not enough for him to simply acknowledge the downsides of efficiency. There is a live debate over how to solve the problem going on right now, as the Biden administration takes the first step towards prioritizing resilience by attempting to re-regulate shipping companies, encourage competition to weaken corporate pricing power, and support domestic manufacturing. Mr. Summers shouldn't be an obstacle to this effort or even an interested bystander watching it unfold. He should be an active enthusiast for cleaning up the mess he made. So let me ask you this. What is kind of the solution of all this? I mean, as we're kind of looking at what has gone on the past 2 years, the one kind of lemonade situation in a sea of lemons is, we can try to rethink how we conduct society. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if we're having like a way it ought to be conversation, what can be done? What can be done differently?
Get better people in charge of the levers of power and of money, which requires the popular will to do that. I mean, what else is there? There are horrible people in charge. There are horrible people in front of the levers of power and in control of our money, and they're going to keep doing what benefits them. From my point of view, my mission, whatever, is to help people understand of how things actually work and to stop being duped by these policies that are the incentive, or no, their incentive for doing this is to keep them rich and to, we can make more profit as long as everything goes great. But life is not that way. Life sometimes doesn't go great. And these policies are only anticipating things going great, and that's blind. But it doesn't matter for them because they're protected from it. I wanted to go back. I don't want to. There's something else that I wanted to say, so I'll leave it there for this. But there was another point that I wanted to make.
All right, go ahead, make it.
Okay. I want to emphasize what I got out of this article, which he doesn't directly say, but he says somewhere in the article, like, lower prices. We will give you lower prices. And Walmart, like you said, Walmart gave us lower prices.
Right.
And, that's their goal. That's the primary goal. But don't look at that your wages are lower.
Mm-hmm.
Don't look at that unions are being decimated. Don't look at that, climate collapse, and don't look at communities being decimated and outsourcing and so on. Don't look at those things because your prices are lower.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the shiny ball put in front of people to ignore all of the things that really matter. Prices matter, but it's just one of many things. But we only focus on it as if it's the only thing. And that is the inverse of inflation, the boogeyman of inflation that is used against us. That when wages are threatening to go up or demanded to go up, that we demand wages go up, that we demand more worker rights, that we demand stronger unions, that we demand more, enforcement of, people policy and whatever it is, inflation, which is the inverse of you'll get lower prices. This is you'll get higher prices if you try and do anything for the people. So that's what they focus on. They put this shiny ball in front of us for both sides of here's your lower prices. Just don't worry about all these other things that really affect you. And of course are affected by prices. And when things are, go wrong and we try and increase our rights, inflation, your prices will rise up. It's the shiny ball that they put in front of them in both directions.
Well, and at the end of the day, it has the same theme. And that theme is accept less, accept this shitty way of life, accept this decreasing and decreasing and decreasing quality of life.
It's unfortunate but necessary, Ron.
Opportunity. It's unfortunate but necessary. And it is just, it's mind-blowing. I mean, every day when I wake up and I just kind of look at the world around me and I just think, like, why do we freaking tolerate this? Why do we tolerate this? And I'm not saying anywhere in the world has it perfect. Nowhere does. But man, the United States, holy shit, man. We are just a trailblazer of everything of what not to do. And the society that we have conditioned people to accept. And a lot of people in the United States, they don't even realize that other places have it so much freaking better. They don't even realize it. They have no idea. like that other places get, like, a person in Australia has like a month of vacation every year. Say with a person in any EU country or anything like that. It's like just all those like little things that really add up and completely change the quality of your life. A lot of people in the US don't even realize that. And then you get people just going against their own interests constantly. And MMT is just like such like the culmination of that, because it's so hard to turn people on to any of these ideas because people are so conditioned to accept just the bowl of shit that's put in front of them. That I think the idea of not eating that spoonful of shit is overwhelming. And MMT isn't just saying, hey, not only do you not have to have a spoonful of shit, you can actually have a frickin' filet mignon or a great, portobello mushroom if you're a vegan, whatever your dietary preferences are. That's what MMT's saying. And but we're having a hard enough time getting to people to put down the shit spoon.
I think the people who, I think that's true of most of the people that we see on social media that are portrayed on the news. I think that's true of many of them, and maybe a lot of them. I think there's a whole population of people that are suffering and are not interested in, or not buying that spoon necessarily, or not even thinking about anything because they're just so busy suffering that have been pushed out of existence. And that there are a lot of people, but there's just more and more people being pushed out of existence. So we don't have to, so I think you're correct, but I think it is a little bit more of the people who have not been pushed out of existence. And it's our job to reach down to those people who have been pushed out of existence. That's our job because if we don't, then we're soon going to be one of those people pushed out of existence. Even those of us in our McMansions are going to be among those people pushed out of existence soon enough, because we are ignoring those people on the bottom. And I really see it as an analogy of like, your foot's infected, and there's a red line going from your foot to your knee, but that foot, it's not a big deal because that foot's not part of us. The foot's not part of us. But soon enough, that red line is going to reach your core of your body and your heart, and it's going to take all of us down. But we ignore the foot. It's like we don't have the poor. We ignore the poor because it'd be nice to help them, but it's just a virtue. It's not critical. It's critical because soon enough we're going to become part of them, even sitting on our McMansions.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, just for the record, neither you or I are in a McMansion. Just in case anyone was confused. I mean, I'm not. I don't know. I've never seen your house. Maybe you are, but I'm not. I live in a 1-bedroom.
Not a McMansion. It's a nice house, but it's not a McMansion. But
yeah, I got in your analogy. I don't. Are you and I the ball sack? Like where are we in your?
I'm not going to go there.
You
are welcome to develop this analogy as far as you would like, but I'm just going to leave it there.
I want to be the taint. I'm the taint in this analogy.
Okay.
Jeff, where can people go to learn more about you?
I'm gonna, if I may, I'm just gonna very briefly plug something I'm doing tomorrow, which is on Kerberos Media on YouTube. I'm doing my first of 3 rehearsals of a new introduction presentation that I'm doing. It's going to be a little bit of a mess, but it's the beginning of something that's going to be good.
Kerberos Media. Name of the platform again?
Kerberos. Kerberos. That's the network that Activist MMT and Joe Firestone and several others have joined. So tomorrow night at 5:00, I'm going to be giving my first of 3 rehearsals of a new presentation that I did. And I'm going to do it again in the week after I get some feedback and so on. So tomorrow night at 5 on Kerberos on YouTube, Kerberos Media. You can support me at patreon.com/activistmmt. I have a whole podcast. I have well over 100 episodes. This person is episode 100. And Activist MMT on Twitter and Activist MMT on Facebook.
Right on. Well, Jeff, thank you again for another MMT Monday. We do this once a month. Yeah, man, check it out on Kerberos Media tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Yes, and then an old episode will be replaying at 7 on the same channel.
All right. Well, cool, buddy. That's awesome. And thank you again for being here. Thank you for being our MMT dealer. We'll go with dealer if you like.
I love it. I really do.
What about wait. What about MMT Maniac?
Okay. I prefer dealer, but that's okay too.
No, we'll go. I mean, dealer will be the lead, but we have to.
After that, you could use your judgment. I trust your judgment after that. But I just like the idea of in Sesame Street, you want to buy an O? Like I picture myself with want an MMT?
You have the deficit myth under your trench coat. Be like, you want some MMT? You ready for this? Yeah. You ready for this MMT? You
know the reference? You know the reference? You want to buy an O? I hope you know that reference.
Of course.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay. Good.
What was Wait, which character was it though? I mean, I know that Sesame Street.
Well, that's the character
it was Ernie, right? Ernie.
Well, no. Actually, it was. You want to buy an O, and it'll only cost you a nickel. And then Ernie says in response, "A nickel? Shh, a nickel."
So who was selling the O though?
Just no, I don't know what characters it was. It was a secondary.
Oh, it was
character.
Just one of the lesser known.
That's all he did was you wanna buy a letter or buy a vowel or buy a. So you want to buy an O.
It's such a beautiful show.
That's a classic skit.
It's a classic. You've probably revisited more recently in life than I have because you have kids and I don't have. I mean, I know your kids are past that age now, but
they will always be into the Muppets because they want to live in my home. So.
Oh yeah, you're a really big Muppet guy. That's right. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, that's your jam. No, I mean, dude, it's brilliant stuff, man. I mean, it's like when you think about Sesame Street, and then I mean. Being from Pittsburgh, like Mr. Rogers was kind of like, dude, Mr. Rogers.
Oh, he was a big deal as well.
He was, and
not funny. He was just a real parent figure kind of a guy.
Oh, totally, man. And sometimes he was funny. He had his moments where he was funny.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, Jeff, thanks for being here. Thanks for being my MMT dealer, and we will see you. I guess I'll see you next month, and then I'll see you in person later in the month.
You said when did you say do you start off on your tour?
Well, April 16th, and I think
I'm pretty sure the second Monday is before then.
I think the second Monday is early in April. I want to say it might be like the 11th or something. So I'll be seeing you here before then.
Yep.
But yeah, and I'll see you in person, which will be wonderful. I haven't seen you in a while.
Cool.
All
Look
right,
forward
buddy.
to it.
Follow Jeff. Go check out all this stuff at Activist MMT and Kerberos Media tomorrow night. And of course, he's the MMT dealer here once a month. Jeff, thanks so much again, buddy. See you next month.
You too. Goodbye.
All right, peace. Man, always a freaking punch of information. Just a freaking steamroll truck of Anyway, that was MFT Monday. Guys, before we get out of here, tour dates, I got them. Get your tickets. Don't wait. RonPlacone.com. Pittsburgh. We kick off April 16th, like I mentioned. Pittsburgh, Toronto. Can't wait to see you, Canada. Ottawa, Montreal, Burlington, Vermont, Portland, Maine, Boston, Massachusetts, and New York City, baby. Get those tickets at RonPlacone.com. Do not wait. Chris Mullen's going to be opening all those shows. Lauren Ashcraft will be on the show in Pittsburgh and in New York City. And we got a very, very special guest in Boston. Jill Stein's going to join me for a tune. Or at least she's supposed to. She will be. It's going to be awesome. RonPlacone.com for all those tickets. And if you are able to, patreon.com/RonPlacone. For a Give What You Can level, you get all kinds of exclusive content. You get full stand-up clips not available anywhere else. You get the patron streams in their entirety. They go out to everyone, but the replay is only available on Patreon and Roffin Premium. You get to drop information for all those streams. I'll make you a theme song. All kinds of cool stuff. And it's for a pay what you can level. I'm interested in building a community around this show. So even $1 a month goes a long way. And I'll make this announcement too. My goal for the summer, I want to get up to 300 patrons. So if you are able, if you won't miss $1 a month, please sign up at patreon.com/RonPlacone. If you can spare more than $1, that's great. But if $1 is all you got, hey, for that $1 a month, you get all of the perks that I just mentioned. Plus, you get all my content in one place. I post everything on the Patreon. Things are so hard with YouTube suppression and people not getting notifications. And do you want the audio podcast or the video? When am I doing a beach walk? It's a pain in the butt. But on my Patreon, you get everything. I post every single piece of content that I do, as well as stuff that's not available anywhere else and is for members only, all on Patreon. And you can get all of that for $1 a month. That's less than a cup of coffee a month. $1 a month. If you're able, please consider it. Patreon.com/RonPlacone. Guys, thank you so much for being here. We'll be back. Another quick special announcement. We'll be back tomorrow for the headline show of the week. I know that's a switch. Usually the headline show is on Thursday, but I'm not going to have a show on Thursday because it's my wife's birthday. So no show on Thursday. The show is going to be tomorrow instead. So I will see you tomorrow, same time, same channel. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Well, actually, it's a different time because MMT Monday is a different time. But the regular show, it will be at our regular time, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And then, of course, the podcast will be out later. So I'll see y'all tomorrow. In the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy, she says meow. I say peace, love, and a general strike.